What's up, everyone? So I have a question for you. And the question is, do you have a spear in your hand or a savior in your heart? And you might be asking yourself, Chad, what do you mean by this question? So let me phrase it a different way. Do you sometimes feel agitated, angry, ready to hurl an insult at someone who speaks against you? What I'm showing you is that you're walking around with a spear in your hand instead of a savior in your heart. So let me show you from the book of Samuel two different characters and how they handled the difficulties and the challenges of their life. So the first one is in chapter 18. So King Saul, who was the king of Israel at the time, had just heard his people of Israel singing a song that David had slain 10,000 people, but Saul only 1,000. And it said that he was jealous. He was angry. He knew that David was starting to get the attention and he thought he was going to lose his kingship to David. And it says that Saul had a spear in his hand and he hurled it, saying to himself, I'll pin David against the wall. So sometimes in our anger, in our frustration, in our jealousy, in our insults, we are trying to kill our brothers and sisters, and not in the literal sense, in the spiritual sense. And this doesn't do any good for our heart and mind. It actually just leads to more anger and frustration. But there's a different way of life. There's a different way to look at it by looking at it through the finished work of the cross. But even before the cross, David handled it differently because he understood who God was. He understood that God was the final say in his life. And in chapter 24, if you fast forward the story, David is being hunted still 6 chapters later by Saul and his men trying to kill him. And David is actually in a cave at this time, and he actually gets Saul to come into the cave, and he goes up behind him and he cuts, it says, a piece of his garment. And he then runs away and then says, Saul, look, I have a piece of your garment. I took this instead of taking your life. I could have killed you, but I spared your life. Some urged me to kill you, but I spared you. I said, I will not lay my hand on my Lord because he is the Lord's anointed. This is the part that I want to concentrate on and reveal how to walk with a Savior in your heart. So it says he is the Lord's anointed, and David's referring to Saul. He knew that God had anointed Saul to be a king. So who is he? Who is David? Even though Saul was doing wrong against him to take his life, God had a higher purpose for Saul. He had more going for Saul than David could have wrapped his mind around. Remember yesterday's teaching around perspective, not having the fullness of wisdom and knowledge and understanding in order to judge someone? Here it is again. David, in his humility, to know that God was sovereign, he didn't kill Saul, even though he had spent the last 10 years trying to kill him. So this is showing us how to walk with love, how to walk with patience, how to walk not holding a record of wrong, how to walk through the revelation of the cross, through a loving Savior. So the quote is, John Maxwell said it, life is a matter of choices, and every choice you make makes you. So will you choose to live with a spear in your hand or a Savior in your heart? Comment below. I want to hear from you, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.